Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Last Life Ever podcast. I'm Jillian Sidoti. That is my partner in crime, Jeffrey Holst. And today we had the opportunity to talk to a gentleman by the name of Mark Ziebold from FamilyOfficeLaw.com, talking about the importance of end-of-life planning and tax planning and all those things that you really should have, especially if you have any assets or any kids. And we're going to do that
right now.
Help me, my brother, can you lend me a hand as I walk through this land of confusion? If we give to each other, then there's nothing to take. Let's live life for the moment before it slips away.
Hey, everyone. Hey, Jeff. Hey, Mark. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well.
Awesome.
I'm also well.
Well, that's good. But what if you weren't doing well and you were about to hit the end of your life? Then what? Well, you need a good estate plan. I don't care who you are. If you have one asset or one child, it doesn't matter. You need to have a good estate plan. So we brought Mark on today.
Wait. What if you have no children and no assets?
Yeah, screw you. No, I'm just joking. I'm joking. But you never know what's going to happen.
You might get some children or assets.
If you have any assets, it's not, if you don't have to have both, just in my opinion, if you have one or the other, and especially if you have both, then you have to have a plan. And by the way, Mark's my attorney, my trust and estate attorney. And maybe I already had 3 kids and a bunch of assets before I called him. So it's like the cobbler's kids have no shoes. That's what we're dealing with here. So, and I think a lot of our listeners are the same way, Jeffrey.
Oh, I think there's some. Yeah. I don't have any children. I don't really have any assets either, but.
Oh my God.
Well, okay, a couple, but not enough that I'm worried about. See, this is something that I think about, and I'm just going to ask Mark this question. I'll just start out with it right here. What if you don't have any children like myself, and maybe you do have some assets? I have a few things, but you don't really care. Like most of the stuff's titled in, your wife and your name together, and you're like, whatever, doesn't really matter when I die.
Stop. You have a bunch of artwork alone.
Well, yeah, but listen, pro tip, Jillian, if I die, and my wife dies at the same time, you should come raid my house.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
I have a really bad estate plan, and no one will know. They'll just tell them I gave it to you.
All right. See, and this is exactly what we're talking about. People like Jeffrey who've accumulated some stuff and some things, some very valuable stuff and some things, and we don't want, maybe his brother and sister and Jeff's one of 4 siblings, and they all have nieces and nephews and or kids, and therefore Jeff has nieces and nephews and stuff like that. So let's just take Jeff as an example, as somebody who's done no planning whatsoever. Where do they start with that kind of planning?
A holographic will.
Stop it! You're not in charge here.
I have a holographic will. I just want to be clear. I have done a little bit of planning. I hand wrote a will.
Yeah. Okay. So one wonderful first step, better than nothing, but a holographic will is just like any other will. It doesn't avoid any kind of court process or court procedure. So when you pass away, if you have a certain minimum threshold of assets, it will be going through the probate court. Here in California, generally that's going to be more than a year in duration. It could be longer. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if you have a holographic will, you can tell the court where the things are going to go. If you don't have a will, the court is going to look at what are called the intestacy statutes in order to determine where those go at the end of your life. So if you'd like the court to have a lot of input, you're doing a great job, especially if the holographic will is a short one often when I see those types of things, it's a few little bequests jotted down, signed and dated, and that's the end of it. But it doesn't often go into the fine details about who is going to get what in what circumstances, and it can create great conflict if, especially those siblings really want that artwork and they're fighting over it at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I specifically disowned them. So if they're watching.
Wait, first of all, I just want to be clear because I like good familial relationships if such can be obtained. And Jeff's sister works for us and his brother was interviewed on this podcast. So maybe you disowned one of them, but I know
we'll get her on the show eventually.
All right. So, okay. So Jeff has a holographic will, which should be his next step, Mark, knowing that he has a bunch of assets. He has next of kin. It's not all going to a sheet to the estate, as we called it in law school, where if you don't have any next of kin, it would go just to the government. Super fun. I know everybody really wants to give their stuff away to the government. But let's just say Jeff has something he wants to do. What should be his next step, regardless of where he lives?
Yeah, regardless of where you live, whether it's a simple will that is prepared with the formalities to identify where the assets are going to go, or even better, a revocable trust to avoid the probate process entirely, one of those two vehicles will determine where the assets go, how they're going to be transferred, and ultimately who are going to receive those assets in the manner in which you decide to pass them at that point. And so this is where I often ask people, if you want to use the metaphor of a canvas and a painting, if you had a painting and you wanted to paint a picture, what is that going to look like with passing the wealth to family members or passing it to nieces and nephews if you don't have children? Do you want to just give nieces and nephews a big lump sum of money? I mean, I know that in my practice, I've had clients who have passed away and they decided to give everything to kids, and kids took a 6-figure check and it was gone in 45 days. And so I've had situations where at the end of the day, what the parents thought was the right wisdom about letting kids make their own mistakes really ended up being very detrimental for them long term along their lives.
That is absolutely fascinating. So I'm going to switch. I'm going to switch for a second away from Jeff's situation and go to anybody who has, whether they're nieces and nephews like Jeff or children themselves or grandchildren in the case of some people. What do you do to prevent that? Let's just say a lot of our listeners have done well in life. They have a nice home. A ton of our listeners are real estate investors, so they have a lot of real property. What do they do? What do they do to make sure that their kids are not running away with a fortune in 45 days?
Well, good question. And especially with the real estate investors, you have to pay special attention to Prop 13 as well, as long as it remains on the books here in California. But other than that, in general, I would say that there needs to be a discussion with your estate planning attorney about the philosophy behind how you're going to pass the wealth to your heirs, whether it's children, nieces and nephews, siblings, whether it's charities involved, whoever you're going to pass the wealth to. It doesn't necessarily have to be the case that you just give a big lump sum distribution to that beneficiary. And oftentimes in this situation, clients are thinking about, the fastest way possible to get assets outside of a trust because they just don't want the perceived hassle. They don't want the trustee to have to do more work than's necessary. But often I'm given the task of giving a educational kind of moment to these clients and having them try to shift the paradigm and think about things differently, because the wealthiest clients or the wealthiest people in this country for decades, for centuries here at this point, have held family wealth in trust. And so for people that want to leave some type of lasting legacy, whether it's a financial legacy, whether it's just a legacy that can take care of things like health and education needs with downstream beneficiaries, whatever that looks like, the way of doing that is not necessarily just giving it to a minor child once they turn 18 or as fast as possible out of trust, but it's actually setting up the right structure and family governance in order to make sure that the wealth is perpetuated from generation to generation.
Oh, that's okay. So that's fascinating. So who do you put, let's take that for a second. Real estate assets. it's a great, let's just say we'll make it really, really simple. We have a guy, we'll name him Jeff, and he just bought, let's say, a 12-unit apartment building.
Okay, let's say there's a guy like that. And maybe he has a couple hundred other units too. Why don't we just go?
Right.
Just in our hypothetical.
I was trying to simplify it. So Jeff owns 100 units or so, a couple hundred units in multifamily property. They all cash flow really well. And let's just say Jeff is the last man standing in terms of like his operating agreements or whatever. He's the only one there. There's no let's just say there's no investors or whatever. How can you put somebody in place? Like, who do you put in place to take care of that? What's the legacy planning look like there?
Yeah, so one option with a lot of our wealthiest clients is that we set up various types of irrevocable trust structures, often in either Nevada or South Dakota for various reasons with the way that the laws are set up in those states, to hold the ownership to the assets. And then those states especially allow for what are called private trust companies. So for clients that want to set up a family board or a family vehicle to generate governance over these assets for multiple generations, you can actually create a family type of company that, you know, might have a committee style approach where maybe one branch of the family tree elects one person to a committee to regulate and to administer the real estate assets that are held in the Nevada Trust or the South Dakota Trust for as long as you would like that structure to remain in place. And so each individual branch of the family tree will govern their votes to put someone on the committee. But yet that committee, if the family can work together, which not all families can work together in that way, but the ones that have been successful at not only building the wealth, but starting to administer the wealth, some vehicle like that is very popular these days with regard to having ownership be separated from the control. And therefore, you've got the asset protection, you've got the administration, and if the family needs money, needs assets, the trust can provide it. But otherwise, you're building up wealth outside of anyone's individual balance sheet, which is exposed to divorces, creditors, things along those lines.
So then is that trust, so it's an irrevocable trust. You put your assets in the irrevocable trust. Again, I'm just using Jeff as an example. Let's just say we have Jeff. He has his assets. He puts his rights to those assets, I guess, for lack of a better term, into the trust because he obviously owns those assets in it. And well, I don't know if it's obvious. I shouldn't be so.
I drew it up on a notebook paper.
Okay, Jeff owns them in his own personal name.
I don't.
I'm joking. I would hope you would know better, Jeffrey.
I did draw up my will on a yellow legal pad, though. That was not a joke.
Did you do that when you had cancer?
Yeah, I've done it several times actually. So when I first got sick, I drew it up in the hospital. Yeah, okay. And then when I got to where I didn't think I was going to die immediately, I made some changes to it. And it got a little unwieldy to have a whole bunch of amendments to a holographic will. So I decided to rewrite the whole thing and revoke the original one. Sounds
smart. I mean, like who would think that an attorney would call another attorney to write their trust for them? But instead, because those holographic wills, those holographic wills, as we all learned in law school, totally hold up and are like never.
Just to be clear, since we brought this up several times for the non-lawyers, which would be the majority of the people in the world, a holographic will is really just a handwritten, signed, and dated document.
Super smart.
And in most states, but not all, recognize them. We're not giving legal advice at least I'm not. Maybe Jillian and Mark are giving legal advice, but I'm not giving legal advice. I'm saying that it is not the smartest way to do it. I happen to know the rules in the state that I lived in when I wrote mine and in the state I currently live in. So I felt very comfortable with my extremely detailed holographic will. It was more of a game for me than anything else.
Yes, I could see that. And like, it's going to be like one of those games that your brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews will be playing when you're young.
Everything goes to two people and none of them are my brothers and sisters or my nieces and nephews.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll talk about that later. But I don't care who your stuff's going to. But let's just say, for example, that we have somebody who owns a lot of interests in random LLCs. Can they, like, what do? Do they assign that to the irrevocable trust? And is it an assignment, or are they naming that as the member? Is the irrevocable trust the member in the LLC?
Yeah, great question. And it depends on if the trust is acquiring the real property to begin with, or if the real property is already in the LLC. Normally speaking, when clients come to see me, they normally are very successful doing what they do. If they are real estate investors, they might have 50 different LLCs or fractional interests in 50 different LLCs. That's where you have to be very careful about not only the Prop 13 rules about transferring a certain percentage of the LLC or triggering a property tax reassessment. And then with the wealthy individuals, you also have to be careful about the lifetime estate tax exemption that is combined with the gift tax exemption, that if they just turn around and give everything to an irrevocable trust, depending on the type of irrevocable trust, that could immediately trigger gift consequences. So what we need to do with any given client is evaluate the balance sheet, determine what the amount of wealth is that they want to transfer off for one reason or another, and then make sure that we're doing it in a way that is the most efficient way to make sure that we're taking advantage of the current laws, and also making sure that we are keeping an eye on what is going to come in future law changes. For example, with the election coming up right now, many wealthy individuals are contacting us because they're very concerned that the current 11.58 million exemption per person may fall back down to the Obama levels of a $5 million index for inflation amount per person, giving up about half of the exemption there at that point. And so if that's the case, and you've got someone worth 20, 30 million in real estate, and they don't act before the election, if it is a certain party sweep, we'll just leave it nonpartisan here today, if it's a certain party sweep, that along those lines, it's already been suggested that they are going to take as one of their first movements in Congress to reduce those tax exemptions so that it's a much higher estate tax and gift tax ramification to all wealthy clients along those lines.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, all right, let's back up for a second. So step one is to get a will, but step two is really to have a trust. Is that accurate?
Yeah, what we say for 99.9% of people is that to have a revocable trust fits within the definition of your fundamental estate plan. It's that everybody needs a fundamental estate plan to not only avoid probate, but just simply to make sure that at the end of their life, their assets pass the way that they want. It is as efficient as possible to eliminate any kind of court proceedings and to make sure that at the end of the day, the structures are in place to defend against any kind of attack. You know, what if a family member does bring a contest or bring an attack against the trust? That you have it structured in the right way so that the person that you trust or the entity, maybe a trust company, would be there to defend your wishes and to go through the court battles before getting the assets transferred to whoever you want them to be transferred to at that point.
Okay. So I want to back up for a second. And I just want to share this story real quick with everybody who's listening or watching. I have never done trust or estate work, probate work, what have you. And then one of my friend's moms died without a will. And her mom did not have a lot of assets. She had a 401k, some stock that had already been put into my friend's name, and then a condo. And so the 401k and the stock are like automatically went to my friend because it was already written that way. So my friend, it's just her and her brother. Her mom dies intestate, has this condo. We got to sell the condo, right? And so we go to sell the condo, and guess what? We have to probate the estate, and there's no will. And there's nobody contesting this. There's one asset. And it took me well over a year to probate that estate. Now, I will tell you right now, I made some mistakes because I don't know what I was doing because I'm not a trust attorney. But here I am, like an attorney trying to probate this estate with one asset, and I'm still screwing it up, still having to file 17 million times. I must have spent more money on filing fees trying to just file simple paperwork because it is so detailed and so important. Because think about it, if you give away somebody's property, it's going to be impossible for them to get it back. So the state has a real interest in making sure that these estates get handled appropriately, and you can make it way easier on your heirs so that they don't have to go through this. Like my friend kept saying to me, please just hurry up. I just want closure. I just want closure. She like, it bothered her that it was still going on, not because of the money, not because of the condo, not because she was fighting with her brother, but because of the stress of the fact that her mom died and then died without a will. Just don't do that to your family is all I'm trying to say. That's why I felt it was so important to bring Mark on, because I know so many of you out there are just like me and not doing it and thinking nothing's ever going to happen to you. Like Jeff.
So I want to step back a little bit further than Jillian's questions, actually. Like, if someone comes to you and says, I think I might need an estate plan, and you're looking at everything, is there like a threshold where, like, maybe below a certain level it doesn't even matter? Or do you really think everyone, I mean, maybe you're biased in favor of it, I don't know, but do you feel like everyone needs an estate plan of some sort no matter what?
I think in every state that people live in, they need to evaluate what the minimum threshold for probate is in that state. So California, for years and years, it was $150,000. At the beginning of this year, they just indexed that number for inflation. So it's $166,000 and change at the moment to avoid probate if you're under that threshold. But every year it's going to tick up a little bit. But if you are at that amount or over, you're going to go through the full-blown probate process if someone dies with assets in California that are in excess of that amount. So as was mentioned earlier, if you've got a spouse and it's joint tenancy, we're not talking about that. If it's a payable on death designation, we're not talking about that. But if it's in your name and it's not going to automatically pass to someone else, that's the threshold where we really need to start thinking about what type of trust work is needed for that given individual.
So just to be clear, for non-lawyers, so like you're saying, if it's some kind of joint tenancy, basically, in other words, it's co-owned with someone in a way that your interest automatically passes, like by operation of law, because there's really only 4 ways that this stuff changes hands, right? By operation of law, by contract, which is really what a trust is. It's a contract, or well, I guess I don't even remember the other 4 ways because it's been too long since I've been in law school. But there's a couple more, darn it all. I know there are. I used to talk about this when I did a little bit of trust work, which makes it even worse that I've never done this for myself. But it's been like 15 years now since I even thought about this stuff.
Excuses. Keep going, Jeffrey.
Yeah. Okay. But the point is, you said a payable on death designation. That's like a life insurance contract or a bank or a 401k form that says these are the beneficiaries, right? That's what you're talking about there? Okay.
That's correct. Yeah, and the reason why most estate planning attorneys will say, unless it's self-serving, which it might be self-serving for a lot of people, but a lot of people will say that isn't sufficient, because if you name your spouse as the beneficiary on your account, do you travel together? Do you drive down the 405 together? Do you do a lot of these things to where, if you jump in a plane and you're flying over to Hawaii or whatever it is, and the plane goes down, your beneficiary designation to your spouse isn't going to do a whole lot of good if you die together. And while statistics show that that's not likely, it does happen. You hear about it all the time when people are traveling together and doing things together. And so this is why a trust will not only help avoid that situation, but as you're aware, if you're a joint tenant or something like that, if you become incapacitated, you get sick, you're in a coma or whatever that is, you haven't died, but legally you can't sign on your own behalf. So who can do that? Well, a well-drafted estate plan should give somebody the ability, if you are incapacitated, to sign on your behalf as well to handle your affairs.
Okay. So in other words, you want to make sure that you have somebody other than your spouse designated, because you just don't know what can happen to both of you at the same time.
As a successor, you want to name your spouse. I would say 99.9% of my clients do. There's always those couple of people that come in that don't want their spouse on really pulling the plug or anything else like that. But other than those people, the spouse is generally going to be the number one person making those decisions. But then you want at least a couple of backups to be able to step in: a sibling, a parent, a friend, golfing buddy, fraternity brother, whoever it is, you want there to be some backup in case you're in a joint accident so that someone can step in and start handling your legal and financial affairs if something happens to you and you can't do it for yourself.
No, I want to talk about that for a second, and take it back around to some of our viewers who have minor children. They have minor children. Both parents die, and then there's designated for example, a guardian. How, you just don't know what's going to happen, right? And now I'm dead and I can't control the situation. I'll make it very personal for a second. Let's just say I have 3 kids. They're all minors. They got to go somewhere. I have assets to take care of them.
I don't want your kids, just to be clear. Don't make me your guardian.
You don't even have an estate plan. You're not responsible enough.
I'm not. Don't send them to me.
Okay. So I actually have 2 questions. The first one is, how do you control what your guardians, you assign these guardians to your children. How do you control that situation to make sure that your children are actually being taken care of the way you would like with your assets?
Yeah. So with regard to that, you can do any level of drafting into an estate plan to cover the items that you're covering. So what we normally will do is that there will be an interim period if parents pass away and they haven't gotten to the family law court yet to appoint a guardian. We will always nominate interim guardians in the legal documents so they can show anyone in the world that, hey, until this happens, we are the people that husband and wife chose to handle taking care of the kids until the court has its day to rule. Okay. Once we get to the point where someone goes to the family law court and brings a petition for guardianship, there will be ongoing things that need to be done with the family law court in order to make sure that the kids are taken care of, that anything in the kids' names isn't squandered, things along those lines. And the best estate plans will at least have, again, the trust coordinate with whoever is going to be the guardian to make sure that, again, whoever's serving as that trustee, it might be the same person as the guardian. Sometimes in some family situations, that's the right answer. But in many other situations, the person that's the best parent or person to raise the kids isn't necessarily the most financially solvent, solvent person to handle the investments.
You could give me your kids. I might be the best one to raise my kids just because I'm not financially solvent. And
you started this conversation with "Don't give me your kids," so off the table. Don't worry, it's all set. Go ahead, Mark.
Your kids don't really like me anyway.
Okay. So you can work all of those things in, and then that is my concern. Is like, it's actually not my personal concern, but I could see that being a problem. And I'll tell you where this comes from. This is going to sound ridiculous. My kids and I were on Netflix this weekend looking for a comedy that was kid friendly. And we found this comedy called Call Me Zucchini. And it was a little animated show, like claymation type of thing, kind of like, what's that thing? Nightmare Before Christmas. That's what it kind of looked like, right? So we're like, oh, let's watch this. And turns out it's a French film it's not actually a nice comedy at all. It's about poor children who live in a foster care system. And one of the foster care kids' aunt just wants her to come live with her so she can squander all of her inheritance. Wow. So that's actually where I want to be very clear. It's not that I don't trust the guardians I've assigned to my children, in case you're watching Guardians. It's that I watched this movie.
Well, now I know for sure it's not me because I'm watching.
So at the end of the day, so the court is, if you have minor children, the court is going to continually be involved regardless of what you write up. You can't say court, don't be involved. They're going to be involved.
They're going to be involved. And again, at the end of the day, hopefully if there is a guardianship that goes in place, it's not for that many years, but we've had cases where parents have died and they've been very minor children and they've had to go through the system. That's where our firm will work with a number of family law attorneys for our own clients to coordinate that, where we're primarily working with the trustees of the trust to make sure that the funds are available for everything from household expenses, educational needs, everything that you can think of that the parents would normally be taken care of, and that we're working through that process with them as the children grow up until they reach the age of adult, usually the age of 18 in most states. But again, as I said earlier, depending on what your legacy type goals are, it may not be the case that your kids at 18 get a big lump sum of money. In fact, I think that's about the worst thing that you could do personally, but clients are clients. They will choose what they want to do with their estates and what they want to do with their funds.
Hey, if my kids are watching, I didn't do that. You don't get a lump sum. Super sorry. You don't even get a lump sum when you turn 21. So sorry. Anyhow, we have a question from the audience. So sorry if you already answered this. What are the pros and cons of having a protector of the trust with minor children?
Oh, great question. So usually in trust law, I'm going to try to make this as simple of an answer as possible. You have a trustee on the trust that is usually the person or the group or the entity that's given the task of investing the funds, choosing when distributions are made and things like that. But I always get the question, what if that trustee, because they're usually paid based on the percentage of the assets that they have in the trust every year, what if there's like a conflict of interest that they won't kick assets out to the kids because that pays the trustee less? So what I tell people is that in every trust that I do, what the question is referring to is something called a trust protector that's come into estate planning here domestically over the last decade or so. And a protector, if you haven't heard that term before, is basically someone who has certain checks and balances over the trustee. That if the trustee is just doing a lousy job, historically, the beneficiaries would have to sue and go to court and be locked up in a fight for ages and ages to get that trustee removed. A protector, if structured in the right way, can fire the trustee overnight and plug in a new trustee. So that check and balance is there to make sure that not only is the guardian separate from the funds or the investments, but also the person doing the investments is not doing it in such a way so that as to just make them rich and not take care of the needs of the children along those lines.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Veronica, for asking your question. That was a great question. Thanks. Okay.
And also something I didn't know anything about because it must have come in after I stopped paying attention to this stuff 15 years ago.
The other thing I want to ask is, what if somebody you mentioned Prop 13 in California. Let's just say somebody creates their trust in California and, I don't know, moves to Chattanooga, Tennessee. What?
I most definitely would not have created a trust in California.
And I just want to put up Mark's website there, familyofficelaw.com. If you guys need a trust, you can go check him out. He's licensed in 6 states, but you guys can basically practice. You have other attorneys who can practice in other states, right, Mark?
That is correct. Yeah, we primarily work directly with clients in the 6 that I'm licensed in, but if there's a client in another state and they'd like to work with us, we just need to bring in someone into the mix who is licensed in that state to take care of local review of what that state's laws specifically are. But we work with people all across the country,
Sure.
Quite a bit with tax planning and asset protection work, but we can work with most people anywhere at this point.
Okay, that's awesome. All right, so let's go back to that question. If you're in one state and you move and you have a trust in one state, what happens?
Yeah, great question. So most states have rules on the books that say if the trust was validly set up in the state where you used to be and you move to a new state, that it's still valid, it's still in place because it was validly executed in the prior state.
Okay.
But there's nothing stopping California, as California likes to do, there's nothing stopping California from saying, look, if you left an asset in this state, like real estate, I don't care if you're in Chattanooga, I don't care if you're in Montana, I don't care where you are. If your trust owns California property, you can't pick up your dirt and move it out of California. Your dirt's going to stay in California. So you have a multi-jurisdictional estate plan, and you had better make sure that you plan correctly for those real estate assets in California, or just one false step. And if you've owned this real estate for years and years, I mean, I have clients that bought down in Newport for $20,000, $30,000, and now they've got a $6 million house. Those people, if they do a wrong step in transferring their property, it totally gets reassessed to fair market value today under the Prop 13 rules. And so you want to make sure that if you are leaving assets in another state, even if your trust in Chattanooga owns those assets, you want to make sure that the right answers are given and the right steps are taken in order to make sure that whatever you need done is going to be taking place in both states at that point.
So I think the moral to the story is get a professional to help you. with these things, especially if you're in real estate, guys. You gotta have somebody put this together for you. And if you have small children, you gotta have somebody take care of this for you. And if you have lots of assets like Jeffrey does, you're relegated to Jeffrey now, Jeff, because you don't have an estate
better
plan.
than my other nickname.
Jeffy Jeff. So
see, you couldn't even do it. You relegated me to Jeffrey for all of 2 seconds.
I did. Okay, so I'm gonna start calling you Jeffrey Marie anytime I get angry with you, because Marie should be like the default middle name of, anybody who you're angry at. That's
okay, Jillian Marie.
See how that works, right? Mark Marie. Like we got, yeah. See, like Tyler Marie Sidoti, you get see how powerful that is.
I don't know. My middle name is very powerful.
What is it?
You don't know my middle name?
No.
I don't know yours, so that makes sense actually. My middle name is Dale. Dale.
No, that is not. Okay.
Jeffrey Dale. It sounds very, very harsh, mean.
No. Listen, if you don't want Marie, I'll give you Michael. But that's my bottom line.
Marie's fine. Marie's
Jeffrey, okay. Michael. Why did I Holst?
Well, you don't know. You don't even know my last name. You know what? We're no longer friends. What was your name again? I'm sorry.
All right. That's enough. Poor Mark has to listen to this nonsense.
Hey, death and taxes divide people. That's definitely the case. So exactly right.
Well, listen, Mark, this was super awesome. Thank you so much. Everybody, please go see Mark at familyofficelaw.com if you need an estate plan, any kind of plan, just a simple will. He'll help you. Don't go to LegalZoom. You're going to get on there and you're not going to know what you're doing. And if you have minor children or if you have any kind of assets, you really don't want to be using LegalZoom.
And don't follow my example. I fully recognize it's a bad example. It really is. It's not a good plan.
Yeah, considering you thought you were on your deathbed at one point, like when
I was literally on my deathbed when I wrote my first will. Huh? Although, in fairness, I also did a healthcare power of attorney, like a patient advocate, and I used the form that I used when I was doing estate planning at my office. So that one was really official looking for the hospital.
Listen, honestly, you're not convincing me of your stuff. So anyhow, Mark, thank you so much. Any parting words for our audience?
No, I just tell you, it's the age-old adage, the failure to plan is planning to fail. So from that perspective, if you want to make sure that your kids are taken care of, even today, I would say the primary thing that I hear more and more is that if people spend their entire lifetimes building some type of financial legacy for their kids, in today's day and age with the litigation epidemic that we're seeing and with the divorce epidemic we're seeing, you can give an inheritance to your child, and within a year, everything that you built your entire lifetime can be torn down and destroyed. And so from that, if you want to make sure that you're planning not only for your kids, for your grandkids, for other people downstream in your family, this is what we do every day, and we can help you with any amount of wealth, any level of wealth. There's different types of strategies depending on what you'd like to accomplish. We can offer you a number of different ideas at every level of net worth.
Awesome. See, guys, so it doesn't matter who you are. If you got something or you got kids, you should be calling an estate attorney like Mark. So, Jeff, any parting words?
Well, first of all, Mark, thanks so much for coming on. Seriously, it was very informative. But I do have one last thing, Jillian. And that is, I want to remind everyone to live the very best version of their last life ever. Go!
Jeffrey, now, have you learned anything?
Yeah, I learned that I really need to take care of my estate plan. I mean, honestly, I knew that already, so I didn't actually learn it. But I am motivated to do it. I have my notebook paper right here. See, notebook paper, and I'm going to rewrite my estate plan with this pen.
Oh my God. Okay, why don't you call Mark and have him help you?
Yeah, because I'm really cheap.
Okay, why don't you have a cheaper attorney do it for you?
The cheaper attorney is Jeffrey Holst.
Okay.
It's the cheapest attorney I know.
Okay.
He only does law for me, though. He's like, it's my personal attorney. That's how I roll. I'm rich. I hang out with attorneys, and I have my own personal attorney.
Okay, I'll go with that, but you're going to get it done, right? And it's not going to be like a holographic will, right?
No, I mean, it's going to be a holographic will. That's how I do it.
Why?
I like it. It's kind of amusing to me. When I was in law school and I first heard about holographic wills, I was like, I can make the best holographic will of all time. And so that's what I did. I set out to do it. I mean, it was literally like multiple pages with like really complicated stuff and like springing trusts and everything. And I studied the law to make sure all of it was legitimate. And I actually think it's completely fine because I'm weird. The only problem with this is my wife was not inclined to handwrite an entire will, so she has no estate plan. So if she dies first, I'm screwed. But, if I die, it's fine. She'll be taken care of. And that's really all that matters.
All right. Do you think that...
I will fix it eventually in the next little while. Remind me before the end of the year. I'll do it before the end of the year. I'll set a deadline. 2020. Okay. I'll get it done in 2020 before the end of the year.
All right. That sounds good. That sounds good because you need to, because you're going to die during the half marathon, according to you.
Right. Well, I have time. I mean, I've got to do it in the next however many days that is, like 350 some days. Which, by the way, we weren't kidding when we said you should come and run the half marathon with us because when else will you get to see one of your two favorite hosts die?
I just spit.
Yeah, you did. You did.
That's not cool at all. That's
you know what I'm gonna do because I feel bad about you being gross. I'm gonna send you some carnations.
That joke doesn't even make sense right now.
It does if people have watched all of the episodes.
Okay.
In order.
And for those of you that have not watched all the episodes,
we're not gonna repeat it. I said I would never repeat that joke.
Except you really did.
Oh, no, definitely not. I would never do that.
Okay.
Listen, I want to be really abundantly clear here. I think you're very expensive and marginally ungross.
Except when I spit at your jokes.
That's why I said marginally ungross. Like,
marginally.
If you hadn't spit at me, I would have been like, yeah, you're not too bad.
You didn't get spit at. You're across the country at me. I can't.
Yeah, exactly. But I was looking right into your eyes when you spit at me.
Okay. I have some questions for you. What's been going on?
Well, I mean, I've been filming some shows for The Last Life Ever. It's been very exciting. I've also, I talked to some amazing people. I'm going to give people a little sneak peek here. Next week's show is amazing. It really is. We might have already recorded it. It's amazing, though.
It is really good.
Yeah, it's a really good
one. So you're going to have to check that one out.
Yeah, no, but all kidding aside, what I've been doing, I did a lot. Like I was in your event and I had to plan for that. And I've got another event that I'm speaking at this week coming up. Yeah. So I've been working on that. And, I've got some miscellaneous business stuff that I'm doing. And I've been doing a little writing. And I've gotten rejected a million times, but I got the same feedback from two of the people that rejected me. So now I'm editing one of my stories. And I love editing. It's the best part of writing.
You learned that from one of our guests. That's awesome.
I did. And then I'm reminded constantly by my accountability partner, Jillian.
That you love editing. And actually...
And by reminded constantly, I mean, you've never reminded me.
Well, listen, let's talk about something else that you were working on, which was you wanted to go back to Egypt. How is that going? Are you going to get back to Egypt anytime soon, even though coronavirus is still running rampant?
I am. I'm going to get back to Egypt sometime in the next while.
Like, what are you thinking? Have you gotten any?
So my friend who I'm going to Egypt with turns 80 in October.
Crazy.
And I would really like to go for his birthday. So
in October.
Okay. That's the goal. The thing about Egypt is the weather is much better in October than it is November and December.
Oh, okay.
And the winter is okay. Like, I mean, it's fine. Like you can go in like February-ish. But we're going to try to do it this year. So hopefully October. I have some conflicts on my schedule and such, so it isn't lined up quite yet. But
yeah, I got to be honest with you. It looks like to me, coronavirus has been flattened. The curve has been flattened in Egypt. Let me show you.
The numbers in Egypt look pretty good.
Yeah, hold on. Let me see if I can share this. Share screen.
And actually, interestingly, several weeks ago on the show, we talked to Zora about that very thing, and she said that everything she sees already then, and that was several weeks ago now, was that Egypt was doing very, very well. They actually never had an enormous amount of coronavirus, considering the number of people that they have living on top of each other. You've never been to Cairo, but when you go to Cairo, you'll see it's like 20 million people living in a relatively dense area. So it's hard to imagine how they wouldn't have a lot. Now, I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect that what happened is they had poor testing, and it went through their population relatively quickly because they're very compact and on top of each other. And I think that a combination of that and extreme adherence to the rules cut it back really, really fast for them.
Well, I want to go to, I think you should go. And based on these numbers like that we just saw,
it might be safer than staying here. Yeah.
Actually, it kind of is, right?
Like other than the getting on a plane and flying across the ocean thing, like if someone has coronavirus on the plane, then you're screwed. But assuming no one on the plane has coronavirus, you're good. Because there was a study that just came out that said, that doesn't look as good right there.
This is Mexico, which is where I want to go.
I also want to go to Mexico, but not until next year.
Not until next year.
After I get my vaccine.
Oh, you're not going to go to Mexico if you don't have a vaccine? That makes sense. There's a lot of people in Mexico.
I mean, I don't know. Well, there's a lot of people in Egypt too.
I mean, there's a lot of cases in Mexico.
I might go without a vaccine. I don't know. I'm not certain of that. It depends on what the situation looks like at the time,
This is the United States. This is not good.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. Everything I hear is that it appears to be, back on the downswing, although there was a little uptick there, right? But that's statistically apparently insignificant because it's only a couple of days, but we'll see.
Wow, I don't know. This is it looks like it's
how's Chattanooga looking on there? Can we zoom in and see Chattanooga?
Hold on.
See how I'm doing? Hold on.
Tennessee.
That's Alabama. That's where you're from.
Tennessee stuff from Alabama. Coffee. Okay, let's see. Chatting. Pardon me, boy.
Wow, singing the song again.
Yeah, well, I'm right.
It doesn't look too bad actually. It's pretty small. It's Hamilton County. That's my county. How we looking in Hamilton County? I'm
looking.
Yeah, you're really slow. You must have.
It's not going. Hamilton 710 cases.
That's not that bad actually.
In September, yeah, it's not that bad.
Yeah, that's really not that bad. Mm-mm. There's a lot more than 710 people in Hamilton County. So, did you prepare yourself a joke for the end of our episode?
I did, and this one is an homage to you and to death.
Okay. Well, I'm a big fan of staying alive, so hopefully in this joke I don't get killed off.
No, it's just
I have
three. It's not about you. It's an homage.
Okay. Good, because I have 347 days to live. So,
okay.
Which is going to really confuse people that watched last week's episode because I also had 347 days to live then.
Yeah, it should have gone down 340 days.
Well, that would be, by the time this comes out, I might have less than 340 days to live.
Okay. Listen, if cancer didn't get you, the half marathon certainly isn't going to.
It's my last life ever. I got to die somehow.
Okay. It's not going to be the half marathon.
If it is, you're going to feel really bad about it.
I'm calling out Jason Miller.
By the way, if I die at the half marathon, it's going to be your fault.
Okay. I will not
take a lot of
pressure. That responsibility. I will not. And I'm going to call out Jason Miller and tell him that to please stop sending Jeff texts saying that he's most certainly going to die at the half marathon. You are not helping.
Well, he actually said I needed to plan my emergency evacuation routes. He didn't actually say I was going to die. He thought I would live. He was just like, you have to like, you really got to make sure you know where the nearest hospital is. And like, you need to figure out like if you have evacuation insurance. So my answer to him was, by the way, and I don't think you saw the answer. My answer to him was, I'm pretty sure my health insurance covers me in the United States. I don't think I need an emergency evacuation policy. I'm assuming that Kauai has like American style hospitals.
It does.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah. I'm just guessing here that it's in the United States.
And they can chopper you to Oahu if it gets really bad.
I've always wanted to take a chopper, so that'll be really fun. It gives me something to shoot for. I just need to make sure it's bad enough that I get the emergency chopper to Oahu.
Oh, boy.
I've never been on a helicopter.
Neither have I.
Let's do it. Let's go on a helicopter when we're in Hawaii. It'll be cool.
All right, it's just going to be you and me because my husband ain't going because he's like terrified of helicopters.
We'll take a couple of your kids in case we die, and then your husband will only have to deal with one of your children. So that'll be like better, I think, for him, right?
All right. Anyhow, here's my joke. My friend was recently crushed to death under a huge pile of books.
That's morbid, by the way. You should not tell jokes about people dying. I would never do that.
I say this joke because there's a big, huge pile of books behind you.
Correct, there is.
My friend was recently crushed to death under a huge pile of books. He's only got his shelf to blame.
Yeah, so that's funny-ish. But it's not really on topic. You should be telling a lawyer joke today. That's like the quintessential like thing. So I will tell a lawyer Hawaii joke that I know off the top of my head.
Okay.
How about that? That's what I'm going to do. I actually hadn't prepared a joke at all, but I'm going to try this joke that I learned a long time ago. So a lawyer, a priest, okay, and a doctor are stranded in a boat 1 mile off the shore of Hawaii. Okay. They're all stranded in a boat, and they're thinking, you know what? The doctor says, I'm in pretty good shape. I think I could swim to shore. And then he's about to jump in, and he sees a shark swim by, right? So he's like, I don't know. I'm afraid of sharks. And the priest's like, God will take care of me. It'll be fine, right? And he jumps in, and the sharks immediately eat him. They just eat him. They eat the priest. Like, and the doctor's like, yeah, there's no way I'm getting in now. And the lawyer's like, I got this. And he jumps in, and the shark swims up to him, and the doctor's like paranoid because he's like, I'm never going to get to shore now because the lawyer's going to be dead, and I don't even know how to row a boat, right? I mean, that's what he's thinking. And then the shark grabs the lawyer by his leg and flips him up on his back and swims him to shore. That's what happens.
Okay.
Right? And so then the lawyer comes back with like a motorboat and saves the doctor, and the doctor's like, the priest got ate by a shark, and like the shark took you to shore. It makes no sense. And the lawyer said, what? Professional courtesy.
You're such an ass. You really are.
Hey, it's a funny joke. What can I say?
Everybody, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, and listen, I promise. Look at somebody liked my joke. Look, we got a comment.
Yeah, okay.
Look, see? It wasn't me. I didn't make those comments. I don't know who did it, but somebody liked it. They said it was a good one. All right. So, Jillian, before we wrap up here, is there anything you would like to tell people before we die?
Thank you all for joining us. This has been the Last Life Ever.
Wait, hold on. It was Marissa. Marissa liked my joke. She's your friend, and she liked my joke.
You're like the worst. Like, this is the worst.
I can't believe you would say Marissa is the worst. That's just not nice. Marissa, we can be friends.
Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jillian Sidoti. This is Jeffrey Hills. We want you to live the best version of your last life ever.
Never gonna take my freedom.